and I still struggle to do the things, and that brings on an incredible amount of guilt. And I've had many moments where there are people depending on me for at work, different jobs, and the anxiety that I felt, and I couldn't make myself even show up for them. Welcome back. Today we're going to check out a video from Dr. Tracy Marks. Please go check her out. She's got some great videos on here. And today we're checking out what is executive function and how it relates to ADHD. She has some great videos here on mental health, and I've checked out a few on her on ADHD specifically. So we're going to watch this one together. Executive function is a huge piece of ADHD that I've been struggling with and understanding. I get what it does. I get what it's for. But I think it's important to really understand and kind of relate my experience or one's experience to the information, and see kind of where we can make those changes in our lives or improve those behaviors however we can. So let's check it out.
Tracy Marks, a psychiatrist, and I make mental health education videos. Today, I'm talking about executive functioning, what it is and what it looks like when it's not working optimally. This is part one in a series of videos talking about managing ADHD symptoms without medication. ADHD can be thought of as a disorder of executive functioning, so understanding this is an important lead-in to making behavioral changes.
Like I was saying, that's one thing I understand. The first step of fixing, I don't want to say fixing a problem, but improving a situation is understanding and identifying what the issue is, what's causing the issue, and how it works, in this case. So preach.
Executive function is a set of cognitive or thinking skills that are responsible for the following: planning, organization, and prioritizing, initiating actions, self-inhibition, self-monitoring your behavior, being able to shift your attention between tasks, and working memory.
Sorry. Real quick, just look at this. Planning, organizing, prioritizing, initiating actions, self-inhibition, self-monitoring, shifting attention, and memory. I mean, these are such core functions of any machine, let alone a human brain, our being, our ability to do things, And as we could see, executive function is a process. It's a process that our brain uses to do all these things, to regulate these things. And so you can see, even if you don't have ADHD, you could see how a failure in this process can really affect one's ability to just survive in society. I digress. Let's keep going.
That's a lot of stuff, so let's break it down. First, planning, organizing, and prioritizing. This involves any planning on a global level. It's not just planning a party. It's the ability to anticipate how long things will take or how much effort things will require, or thinking through multiple steps to see something that you want to do all the way through to the end. Problems in this area can look like being unprepared for something, even though you had adequate time or resources to do it. You may have trouble managing your time properly because you can't look at various pieces of information and easily tell what's the most important thing to.
Real quick, before I forget. It's true what she says, like the ability to look ahead and figure out and understand how much time it's going to take for you to wash the dishes, or do the laundry. For me specifically, I see almost an overabundance. I'm an overthinker. Think I tend to think ahead because I don't know, it feels like my anxiety wants to make sure that I can minimize the unknowns, the variables. Um, it just makes me feel more in control, I guess, um, and less susceptible to being surprised. It's not that I don't like surprises. I like to be prepared. That's where I feel the most ready to take action. So let's keep going.
To pay attention to. So instead, you may spend your time frittering away at something that doesn't matter much while leaving the most important thing incomplete.
I gotta be honest. I have tried to start making content around this and other passions that I have. But so much of the energy that I put towards it was thinking and planning and pivoting and being distracted by a new way of doing things. And maybe this is better. And I gotta say, it that way of thinking has lost me so many opportunities in life, for things that I would have really wanted or was really willing to work towards, but I just was spent and I had only taken maybe half of the first step. And I know I'm not the only one, but yeah, that's a great point. So let's keep going. Go back a little bit.
Attention to. So instead, you may spend your time frittering away at something that doesn't matter much while leaving the most important thing incomplete. Next, initiating actions. This involves taking action to get started with something. Anyone can put things off that they don't want to do, but trouble with initiation is at the root of procrastinating. It's like there's a block to being able to just do it. So if you have trouble in this area, you may need lots of pressure and prodding to get things done.
She's probably going to go into it now, but yeah, I mean, I don't think it's the procrastination. I remember so many times waiting to the last minute for things and then just kind of going into that hyper focus and really just getting it done. And, um, I remember my final for a programming class that I was taking in college. I was supposed to program, a very basic console based game. And well, I had the idea as soon as we got the assignment and I went home and I started it. I didn't finish it until I didn't keep working on it until like 2 days before. And I did 2 all-nighters, so much coffee. And I was able to get the majority of it done and working. And I communicated to the professor, that I was having issues, solving the last bit, which was the truth. And I still got an A because it was functional and I locked in and it worked and it was fun. But it was Battleship. It was my version of Battleship. It was cool. But, so many examples of needing that time limit, needing that consequence, that threat of consequence, to do something you don't really want to, you know? Yeah. Let's see if she touches on that. I'm sure she will. She good.
So let's say you have a big project to complete, and that project is going to take a lot of work and a lot of planning. The person without trouble initiating will be motivated to get it out of the way so that they don't have to think about it anymore. The person who has trouble with initiation doesn't use this same kind of reasoning. They don't factor in the stress that it will cause having to do things at the last minute with not enough time. They can just still sit there and be immobilized and unable to start the project and put it off until the last minute. Self inhibition.
Exactly what I said. It's much easier for a person with ADHD to be able to put it off and not. I mean, you might stress about it, but it's not going to be as stressful as seemingly stressful as sitting down and doing it right now. Does it make sense? I mean, if you have all the pieces of what's going on, yes, but to the average person, to the neurotypical person, what does it look like? Laziness. And people internalize that and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Let's keep going.
This can be thought of as impulse control. It's the ability to hold back from automatic responses because you're able to anticipate what impact
This is
your
something I've
action
worked
will
on.
have. Trouble in this area can look like interrupting people or even making quick decisions or
So my
snap
brothers.
judgments. Self monitoring. This skill is the ability to look at your behavior and measure your progress against what others expect of you or what's needed of you. If you have trouble in this area, you may tend to have no idea what you're doing and how it impacts others. You may have trouble accepting feedback from people because you don't see what the problem is. You don't see that you're consistently turning things in late or being late has a negative impact.
Unfortunately, I can feel this to a point, but I'm almost the opposite case. And I still struggle to do the things, and that brings on an incredible amount of guilt. Um, and I've had many moments where there are people depending on me for at work, different jobs, and the anxiety that I felt, and I still can't pinpoint why I felt anxious. It was just an anxiety of dread. It was dread, and I couldn't make myself even show up for them or for myself, and that created so much more guilt, and it almost compounded that paralysis, you know? Um, and so I'd be curious to see more on that angle, that perspective, on this self-monitoring behavior. But let's keep going.
In fact, you may forget that you're always late. And it's not that you don't remember that you were late. You don't remember that you have a pattern of being late or a pattern of being unreliable. Ability to shift between tasks. Some people refer to this skill as cognitive flexibility. This is a skill that involves being able to shift attention from one thing to another and also involves being able to respond and adapt to change. If you have trouble in this area, you may be considered to be rigid in your thinking, and you may be unable to deal with any kind of change from the way you think things should be or from what you were told.
This is another aspect that I don't think I struggle with too much. I'm pretty flexible when it comes to ideas. I'm open-minded, but like I said in the past, I have improved consciously. I have improved my listening skills, and I think that lends a lot to just being open-minded and of course curiosity. And I care about truth. I don't feel like I have an ego to protect. I care about what's true and what's right, you know? And I know right and wrong is a very subjective thing, but the majority of us can agree what's good and what's right. Um, and at the very least, I can speak for what I think is good and right. Um, and so I consider myself flexible. Yeah.
Or you could have serious trouble multitasking.
There it is. There it is. I try. I like to multitask. I like to try to multitask, but if it's things that I want to do, which I'm sure we can all relate to, many times I'll I'll play a video game. I'll boot up Marvel Rivals while it's loading. I'll have a YouTube video playing. Um, but once that match starts, I got to turn off the video. If I care about the match, I'm turning off the video. I need to focus, even though I could still hear the game. It becomes too much. Now, if I don't care about the game as much, then I don't mind the split attention. Um, but I'm sure that then it's almost like there's a main task with a side task. At times it's the main task is a game, and I don't want to just sit there while it's loading, so I'll put on a video. So that's the side task. Or if I'm watching a video and I feel like I can't sit still while watching it and I have nothing else to do, I'll boot up a game, listen to the video, mainly be focused on that, but I'll play the game kind of as a second task. Let's keep going.
The last skill is working memory. And this is the ability to keep things top of mind, to be able to retrieve and process recently learned information. And this skill is important for problem solving and decision making because with those mental processes, you need to be able to take the information that's in front of you and manipulate it in a way that helps you make a decision or solve a problem. So, if you have trouble in this area, you can have trouble with problem solving and analytical thinking. Also, if you have inadequate working memory, you could have trouble making appropriate adjustments to your behavior because you're not taking into consideration factors that should affect your current decisions.
Um, yes. I think I'm a decent critical thinker. I enjoy puzzles. I love playing chess. I've played since middle school, and I'm sure that helped develop um critical thinking skills and things like that. But I do tend to forget key factors, which I think is why I've overcompensated to be an overthinker. It's just sometimes you overthink and you think about the wrong things. So,
For example, going back to the example of always being late, inadequate working memory plays a role in your inability to remember your pattern of always being late. It's like yesterday is forgotten and every day is just a new day. The control for your executive functions is located in the front part of your brain that includes the frontal lobes and other structures such as the
yeah,
basal ganglia, which are further down from the
it's a
lobes.
brain thing.
Executive function is also controlled by your prefrontal cortex, and this matters because that's where the stimulant medications work. There's many conditions that could impair your executive functioning, and some of these are depression and a traumatic brain injury.
Yeah. And, it's funny for me because I didn't know what I was feeling when I first brought these issues up, to my doctor. And, the first things that were mentioned were depression, anxiety as causes. But of course, the conversation turned into um, what is causing or is something causing the anxiety and depression. And, after assessments and after conversations, um, ADHD seemed to be that fit. And so we started treatment, and it seemed to work for a little bit, but unfortunately, just it wasn't enough to keep me from losing my job at the time and my benefits and my resources. And, since then, I've taken what I learned during that time and tried to just keep learning and keep changing those behaviors and having conversations. Um, but I think it's still very clear to me and people around me that um, medication might be the best thing for me at some point, because I'm not as capable as I once was. So let's keep going.
A traumatic brain injury occurs when you have an injury to your head that disrupts your brain tissue. Alcohol can also temporarily impair your executive functioning. And if you have a stroke that occurs in the frontal part of your brain, you can have trouble with some of these functions. I mentioned earlier that ADHD causes a lot of impairments in executive functioning. The stimulant medications like Ritalin and Adderall work to increase dopamine in the prefrontal cortex. But even with medication, many people are still left with difficulties managing some of these functions. In cognitive behavior therapy,
Sorry to pause again, but yeah, going back to what I said, you know, I took the medicine and I was hopeful, but it just being realistic, it didn't seem to address what I needed to address. And some of that behavioral therapy was kind of helping me shift my perspective on things. Um, but this is a chronic condition, one or two conversations aren't going to be enough to change a lifetime of behaviors that just are not beneficial in the long run. So, yeah.
focuses on managing some of these executive skills. I'll talk in another video on tips to manage some of the executive dysfunction that comes with ADHD. But first, I wanted you to understand the nature of the problems, that is, the executive skills, and how the dysfunction falls into certain domains. Stay tuned. See you next time.
Awesome. Dr. Tracy Marks, thank you. Thank you for all the content, and everybody please go check her channel out. So yeah, just really understanding what the executive function is, I think, is important. I've learned a lot about it, and this just kind of, gave a little more more context to some of the ideas that we've all kind of recognized in our lives as it's happening, but we don't know what makes it happen, unless you're Dr. Tracy Marks. So anyway, leave a comment, tell me your experiences with either difficulties or failures or successes with executive function. If you have any ideas on what you'd like to see, leave a comment, let me know, like, subscribe, do all that stuff. I appreciate the support. See you next time.